Hi, Dave Youngquist. Welcome to Last Cavalry TV. Well, it's a cold and blustery day here in Michigan, so what better to do than to film a new episode of Last Cavalry TV. This one is going to feature how to create worn leather and wool effects. Let's get started. So the belt has been base coated with Vallejo black brown, and now I'm beginning to apply burnt umber, again a Vallejo color, in a stippling fashion to simulate wear and tear. You notice this is a pretty dark color, but I like to use this one first just to set up the tonal variations. The paint is barely thinned at this point. And again, just applying it in a random manner. Next up is one of my favorite colors, mahogany brown, again by Vallejo. And again, we're going to be adding this to the edges in a stippling motion. Again, showing a bit more wear and tear. And it's the application of these multiple colors that will really give you the depth in the, to create the proper effect. So unlike the burnt umber, where I applied it randomly throughout the leather of the belt, the mahogany brown, which is a very reddish tone, really just gets applied to the edges, where it would occur most often. Again, the paint is just barely thinned. Next up, color number 5 from the Andrea Flesh paint set. Again, another reddish brown, again just to add some tonal variation. And applied again in a random manner to the same areas that the mahogany brown was used. Notice that it's just a very light touch of the brush. And the more random the application is, the better. Now we go to Andrea flat black. I like the flat black because it dries absolutely dead flat, and we need to add a bit of shadow in here. Now this step, the paint is heavily thinned, almost like a wash. Trying to add a bit of shadow there. And because it's so heavily thinned, it's not going to cover what we've already done. It's just going to add a nice translucent look. And I do recommend using an older brush for this. Now, finally, after that is all dried, I'm going to be using Vallejo Smoke, which is a transparent, very smoky color, heavily thinned, and this paint also dries to a satin finish. This will give us the benefit of bringing all the tones together. And may require a second application. And here's our second application. Trying to get a bit more of a leather sheen. And you'll notice the colors are starting to come together, so it's not as drastic in terms of contrast. Dry that with a hairdryer. And then back in with a bit of the mahogany brown again, just to pop a few more highlights. Notice the area of application is much smaller this time. Just hitting the outside edges. And just a little bit more of the smoke to blend it. Back in with a bit more of the Andrea number 5 color. Again, tonal variation is important. And we should be just about finished here. Now we're going to paint the belt buckle. I'm going to start with the Shadow Dark Gold from the Andrea Gold Paint Set. This is a very, very dark gold color, which we apply first. Paint is heavily thinned out, so we're literally just letting it wash into this highly detailed sculpt of the buckle. We let that dry, then we go to Andrea Gold, much lighter color, and we're going to hit the highlights where light would actually reflect off the metal of the buckle. Again, you'll notice I won't be adding that color to the lower portion of the buckle, which would be in shadow. Finally, from the gold paint set, this is a white gold, really, really light color. So we're going to paint just the very high highlights. Just to give it a bit more pop. You can see I'm using the side of the brush to get the paint exactly where I want it. There. Just a little bit more. Then finally, brown ink from Andrea. We're going to wash a little bit of that into the buckle pattern after the other gold layers have dried. This will just Now for the cap, we base coated it in the Andrea Flat Black, and our first color up is going to be Panzerraces from Vallejo, German Tanker Black. It's a very dark color, and I'm going to be using a piece of sponge for our first application of paint. Now I'm going to dab the sponge into the paint and literally just dab it on. This will give a real nice worn wool effect. A little bit more. Now, dark gray from Vallejo. Same effect, same little piece of sponge. I literally just ripped a piece of sponge right off the little platform that I'm using to rest the figure on. So you can see, starting to get some nice tonal variations there. And you could also use various shades of brown if you prefer. And finally, London Gray. Again, Vallejo color, which is a medium gray color. Sponge it on once again. It looks pretty rough at this stage, but bear with me. We'll get it all smoothed out here in a moment or two. I'm going in with a light wash and adding some more effects with the dark gray color. Then, using the Andrea flat black, I'm going to paint in the seam. Add some definition. And we're going to use a bit more of that flat black, again, just to break up some of the other tones. Then finally, we make up a wash of the flat black and a bit of the tanker black, dab off the excess, and to bring all these tones together so they're not so harsh, we're just going to apply a wash over everything that we've just done. And let that dry. I'm going to go back in with a little bit of the darker gray, a little bit of the London gray, and add just a bit more weathering to the top of the brim. Again with the sponge, starting with the tanker black. See, we dab it off, the excess, and apply it to the top of the hat. Exact same technique as we used on the side of the cap, or the hat. Varying the tones. Again, it looks sloppy while you're doing it, but the end result is what we're really, looking for. And finally, the wash to bring everything together. Then I'll go back, of course, and finish the other two sides of the hat. There it is. Hope you enjoyed this episode, Last Cavalry TV. And I'm going to follow up with a list of all the paints that I've used on this particular episode. Here they are.